Hello, world history students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have the beginning of your notes for our Africa unit. We're going to start with Chapter 10, Section 1, Early Civilizations in Africa. So, to start with, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the geographical environments. And as we go along, you've got a little chart in your notes to fill out. Eventually, you're going to have a mapping activity to complete. That kind of reinforces this a little bit. But our environments consist of things like our desert. There are several areas within Africa, but probably the biggest is the region of the Sahara, kind of in the northern part of the continent. Arid wastelands for the most part. I think a lot of people, when they see pictures of like sand dunes, they assume that it's the Sahara. But not all your desert is necessarily sand dunes in itself. There are rocky areas, areas of scrub and such, making it very difficult to farm. Along with that, we have our dry woodland areas. These are just wooded areas, not necessarily tropical rainforests. Some of these have a little higher elevations that go along with that. Mediterranean climate zone. These are areas that are, for the most part, along the coastal regions, typically along the northern southern part of the Mediterranean. So when you talk about like North Africa, I think that's kind of what comes to mind when we think about Mediterranean. But if you move along the southern coast of Africa, there is also a Mediterranean climate zone as well. It's very similar to if you've ever traveled to Southern California. Areas like San Diego and Los Angeles typically experience a Mediterranean climate. The shale. This is a semi-arid area of land that's just south of the Sahara Desert. It actually is a pretty large region. You have grasslands for the most part that are kind of mixed with the encroachment of the desert. Not necessarily the greatest farmland by any means, but certainly far more vegetation there than you might see within the desert itself. The savanna, this is grasslands. That's usually has scattered trees. There are wet and dry seasons here. It does support farming, a lot of grazing of animals, and it's typically where the majority of the people in Africa are living. This is where our big populated regions are located. And then finally, the tropical rainforest, typically along the equator regions here. So this is hot, humid, dense forest, high rainfall year round, warm temperatures to go with that. So if we take a look at the map here, talking about our desert area, you can look at the Sahara, but if you go kind of to the east of the Nile River, you'll find the Nubian Desert. If you go south, you can find the Kalahari Desert as well. All of this is kind of within that desert climate zone. The dry woodland areas, this is kind of in the pinkish color here, coral, if you want to call it that. You find a little bit on Madagascar, a little bit obviously within the southern part of Africa, not very far south of the equator. The Mediterranean, this is kind of the purple zones. So if you get up there closer to Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, a little bit of probably Libya, and then south to South Africa, you're going to find that climate zone as well. The shale, which is the area that's kind of in orange, huge swath of land kind of falls into that, along with our savanna, also kind of in the orange, making up large areas of the continent and also large population areas. And then finally, the tropical rainforest, pretty much along the equator. If you take a look at West Africa, not very far from Ghana, into the Congo or Zaire River Valley, and then again on kind of in the along the east coast of Madagascar, you're going to find that as well. So, Africa's diverse geography has helped shape life on the continent because each region has a different type of climate and provides different resources for the people who live there. In each area, different cultures and ways of life have developed. Early African societies shared cultural patterns in which the people who had once freely roamed began to live together and form villages. And at the heart of African life was obviously the family. Family groups, for the most part, would hunt together, travel together, and settle villages together. During Africa's Iron Age, the spread of iron technology changed farming practices in sub Saharan Africa. Sub Saharan Africa is actually Africa south of the Sahara Desert, and it changed Africa's society. When we think about the spread of technology, we've talked about some of our earliest civilizations and how they acquired the use of iron. Uh, at some point in time, this is going to be traded off, and eventually it's going to end up in Africa, and it's going to be utilized within their farming communities. Thank you very much.